Before the Ranger Creed is recited by a formation of Rangers at any ceremony, you will always hear the narrator say this: "Will all Rangers, past and present, please join us as we recite the Ranger Creed." Every Ranger will stand, and as they say those 6 stanzas, they are transformed back to a time when they had the pleasure and the burden of this brotherhood. That feeling is hard to describe. However, it's one that never leaves you. It's a connection that spans the globe and can be reignited when you hear the phrase, "Hey, Ranger, what battalion you from?" Amongst this formation, there are Rangers that stand out. They are legends of this elite organization, and when their names are spoken, people instantly have a story and for a moment relive it. Legend of the 75th podcast wants to capture that feeling and those stories. We want to ensure that these legends' triumphs and sacrifices never fade away. So sit back with your favorite adult beverage and listen to the stories from the legends of the 75th. All right. Hey, welcome everybody. I'm very, very excited for this episode. We've actually been working this one for quite a while, but as I was telling Major General Thomas Solhjem right before we started recording, that I found that it's actually better to wait till people retire. One, there's calendars are actually just a heck of a lot more free, but also just the conversations are usually generally a lot better. So if you don't know Chaplain Thomas Solhjem, Major General, retired now. He joined the Army in 1974 with one of the very first cohorts for the Volunteer Army as a combat engineer. Then after getting out, after serving, he went into the reserves for about 10 years. In that time, he also served as a pastor and eventually coming back into active duty as a first lieutenant. He served in the 175, the 75th Ranger Regiment, JSOC, SOCOM, FORSCOM. He was also the Deputy Chief of Chaplains, and then he was the 25th Chief of Chaplains for the United States Army. He did a total of 49 years. Let's put that in context. That's 6 years older than I am right now, and did 68 months deployed total to combat. Sir, welcome to retirement. First off, congratulations.
Thank you, Mike.
It's better than everybody says it is. But it is an absolute honor to have you on Legends of the 75th podcast today.
Hey, I'm honored to be invited, and anything I can do for a fellow Ranger, for the community, I'm all on board, because I think the thing that we got to recognize is we're just stewards of what we receive. Yeah. And I received so much from the regiment. Now it's my opportunity to really give back. So thanks for the opportunity, and hopefully there's a pony in here somewhere. There's a nugget for somebody.
Sir, based off just the conversation you and I were having right before this episode, there's going to be a ton of things that we're going to be able to sit there and talk about. Just, your story in general, which we usually cover in the legends, because, everybody is at some point in their journey, either they're getting ready to embark on it or they're in stride of it. But, what we just, many times we'll just look at our life and we'll go, well, it's just my life. I've lived it. Like, I don't think there's anything significant about it. In fact, a very, very high ranking sergeant major that recently retired as well, I'll tell you afterwards, I don't want to throw him under the bus. He's like, I don't really think I have anything exciting to say that people are going to be riveted by if I come on the podcast. And I'm like, are you crazy? Like, you have had amazing life. But anyway, my point being is there's so many just things that can help other people, with where they are in their journey because of the life you've lived. So I'm definitely excited to dive into it and have a conversation about it. And I really appreciate the sentiment about, giving back to the Ranger Regiment, because we owe so much to it, and that's the genesis behind this podcast is capturing the stories and giving back. And, there's some lessons learned and some preservations of history that we're trying to do here. So I love it. Well, let's start at the beginning. You were telling me before the episode, you had a wonderful, you were a perfect angel as a child. And
Oh, Mike, you obviously, I must have been muted during that part of the conversation. Yeah. So it's interesting. We're flawed. So yes. All of us are flawed, and the degree to which is often driven by external factors can bring out the worst in us.
That is true.
Yeah, I grew up on a ranch, and boy, it was idyllic, man. I had, horses, freedom, all of that. And then about late elementary, junior high school, things started going topsy-turvy in my parents' marriage. We moved into Fargo, North Dakota. And then ultimately, my parents divorced. I'm not here to go into all of but it was pretty devastating, the circumstances. And so I became a very angry, bitter, resentful young person. And you have to own that.
Right.
Yes, circumstances around you, but so then, fast forward, drug use and other illicit things, and found myself getting excommunicated from the public school system. My grandfather jumped in, he haloed in, so to speak, and rescued me. And he paid for me to go to a private Christian school, Lutheran school there in Fargo. And I'm convinced that I did not graduate from there for academic excellence. It was my grandfather's money that kept me afloat. And so when the volunteer army stood up, I saw these posters, and I thought, wow, what a way to get out of this mess.
Right.
I'll go join the army. So in 73, the Vol Army stood up on 10 July. I got a note from my mother. I was 16 years old, went to the MEP station and in process, and then took an oath. And then a year later, you're delayed entry, right?
Right.
And upon graduation from high school, they'll notify you when they have a date for you to go to basic training. So fast forward, then that occurs, and all of the things that were in my life I just brought with me into an army at that time that was reeling in the Vietnam era, still winding.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
A lot of racism, drugs were rampant in Europe.
Mm.
It
And
was
your first
terrible
assignment was in Europe, correct?
in Europe, in Bamberg,
Oh
Germany,
man. Yeah.
in the engineer battalion. And so just to cut to the chase, all of the behaviors just manifested themselves in other ways now, as I was unsupervised away from home, and in that environment. And it was that was an army, that era and that army. We were at a tipping point. And I want to weave into the story. Obviously, I'm here and I'm a chaplain. And obviously, if you saw my uniform, you see I'm a Christian chaplain. So um, I'm going to complete my story, but I want to connect it to the Ranger Regiment,
Okay.
because I think what I'm painting is a picture of an army that was not ready, and an army that was not disciplined,
Mhm.
and an army that was not focused on defending and protecting the nation's interest.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I'm using those terms very broadly to the men and women who wore the uniform, primarily men. And so I obviously I encountered, and there was a lack of leadership. But a medic, Sergeant First Class Doc McElroy, an African American, a sharecropper's son, 2 tours in Vietnam. He was from Kentucky. And there's no reason in that environment that a black man from Kentucky should give a hoot about a white guy.
Right. Yeah.
And he did. And there was something different about him. And he saw I was upside down. I 2-time drug overdose. I'm a suicide survivor. That's how bad I was. That's how low I had gotten. I just didn't
Was
care
this while you were in the army?
while I was in the army. Yep.
Oh, wow.
I
Okay.
had